The transport shuddered as it punched through the atmosphere of Kelver Prime, and Lieutenant Commander Derek Hayes gripped the overhead rail while alien dignitaries stumbled around him. The Silvarie princess, Lyra Antheth, caught herself against his shoulder, her crystalline eyes flashing with irritation. "Careful, Cadet," she said, pulling away. Derek didn't correct her. 3 years commanding deep space reconnaissance meant nothing here. He wore no insignia, carried no weapon, and the diplomatic corps had dressed him in a plain gray jumpsuit for the treaty signing. Just another human face in the delegation. The ship lurched again, harder this time. "That's not turbulence," Derek said. The Silvari princess ignored him, smoothing her flowing robes as the other delegates, representatives from a dozen species, murmured nervously. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom in halting galactic standard. "Minor malfunction. Landing in 3 minutes." Derek's jaw tightened. He moved toward the cockpit, but a Throrian ambassador blocked his path, all 4 arms crossed. "Sit down, human. You are making others nervous." "The ship dropped 50 feet in half a second," someone screamed. Derek shoved past the Throrian and slammed his palm against the cockpit door. It slid open. The pilot was dead, slumped over the controls with a Calvaran blade in his back. Derek spun. The second pilot lunged at him, another blade gleaming. Derek caught the alien's wrist, twisted, and sent him crashing into the instrument panel. Sparks erupted. The ship tilted violently. "We're going down!" someone shrieked. Derek dropped into the pilot's seat and yanked the blade free, tossing it aside. His hands flew across the controls. The ground rushed up through the viewport, jagged rocks and twisted metal forests. 20 seconds, maybe less. "Everyone on the floor! Now!" The Throrian ambassador started to argue. The ship's hull began to scream. "Down!" They dropped. All of them. Even the princess, her face pale beneath her silver markings. Derek pulled back on the thrusters, killing their forward momentum. The ship groaned, metal shrieking. He angled the nose up, burning fuel they didn't have. The landing gear deployed with a hydraulic hiss. 5 seconds. 3. They hit. The impact threw Derek against the console. His vision blurred. Something warm ran down his face. The ship skidded across the rocky terrain, grinding to a halt in a cloud of dust and smoke. Silence. Derek pushed himself up, wiping blood from his eyebrow. Behind him, the delegate slowly rose, shaking and disoriented but alive. Princess Lyraith stared at him, her crystalline eyes wide. "You fly," she whispered. "Everyone flies," Derek said, checking the sensors. "We've got company." Armed, moving fast, he turned to face them, and they're not here for the treaty. The sensor screen painted a grim picture. 47 heat signatures converging on their position from 3 directions. Derek pulled up the tactical overlay and felt his stomach drop. Kelvaran shock troops, elite killers wearing full combat exosuits.
"Is there a security detail?" Derek asked.
The Thorian ambassador made a choking sound. They were on the escort ship. Fell the one that should have been protecting us. "The one someone sabotaged," Derek said. He scanned the cabin. No weapons. No emergency kits. The diplomatic transport had been stripped clean. This was planned. Princess Lyra moved beside him, looking at the sensor display. Up close, he could see the faint bioluminescent patterns along her neck, a sign of elevated stress in her species. "The treaty dies if I die," she said quietly. "My people and the Kelvaran Empire have been at war for 6 generations. This peace summit was our last chance. Someone doesn't want peace." The warlord cast. She touched the screen where the signatures clustered. "They profit from war. If I die on Kelvaran soil during treaty negotiations, my people will think it was an assassination. We will retaliate. The war continues." Derek's mind raced. The crash site was in a canyon with cliffs on both sides. No cover, no defensible position. The nearest settlement was 90 kilometers away. "Can you run?" he asked. "I am royalty, not fragile," she said, lifting her chin. "Good. Everyone who can move with me. Now." He pulled the emergency release on the rear hatch. It hissed open, ramp extending. The Kelvoran sun beat down, twin stars blazing in a purple sky. The air smelled like copper and ozone. Derek jumped down first, scanning the canyon. To the east, a narrow ravine cut between the cliffs. It was their only chance. "Move!" The delegates stumbled out, 12 in total. The Throrian ambassador clutched his side, ichor leaking between his fingers. 2 Meridian scholars helped him down. A Zenthari diplomat, barely 4 feet tall, scrambled after them. Derek heard the first pulse weapon discharge before he saw them. The shot vaporized a chunk of the transport's hull. The delegates screamed and ran. "The ravine! Go!" Kelvoran shock troops crested the canyon rim. Their exosuits gleamed black and crimson, each soldier standing 8 feet tall with weapons integrated into their armor. They moved with mechanical precision. Derek grabbed the Zenthari diplomat and shoved him forward. "Run!" Another pulse blast tore through the air. It hit the Thralian ambassador square in the back. He went down without a sound. Princess Lyraeth froze, staring at the body. Derek grabbed her arm. "I need you alive. Move!" Something in his voice cut through her shock. She ran. They made it 15 meters before the shock troops opened up in earnest. The canyon lit up with plasma fire. Rock exploded around them. A Meridian scholar went down. Then another delegate Derek didn't recognize. They weren't going to make it. Derek skidded to a stop. The ravine entrance was 30 meters ahead. The princess and the others were almost there. The shock troops were converging, 60 seconds from effective range. He turned back toward the transport. "Cadet, what are you doing?" the princess shouted. "Buying time. Get to cover." Derek sprinted toward the crashed ship. Pulsefire tracked him, tearing up the ground. He dove behind the landing gear as a shot melted the strut above his head. The metal groaned. His hands found the maintenance panel. He ripped it open and pulled out the fuel coupling. Chemical propellant hissed out, pooling beneath the ship. The shock troops advanced in formation. Professional, unhurried. They thought he was trapped. Derek smiled. He grabbed a piece of scorched metal and scraped it against the deck plating. Sparks flew. The fuel ignited. Derek ran as the fireball consumed the transport. The explosion lifted him off his feet and threw him 10 meters. He hit the ground hard, rolled, kept moving. Behind him, the transport became a miniature sun. The shock wave caught the nearest soldiers, throwing them back, their armor cracking. He ran for the ravine as secondary explosions tore through the canyon. His ears rang, his lungs burned. Hands grabbed him as he reached the entrance. The princess and a Meridian scholar pulled him into the shadows between the rocks. "You destroyed our only shelter," the Meridian said. Derek leaned against the stone wall, catching his breath. Through the ravine entrance, he could see the burning wreckage. The shock troops were regrouping. They'd lost maybe 6 soldiers. 41 remained. Shelter wouldn't have mattered, Derek said. But now they can't call for immediate extraction. We've got time. Time for what? The princess demanded. Derek looked at her, then at the terrified delegates huddled in the ravine. Time to survive. The ravine twisted through the cliffs like a wound in the planet's surface. Derek led them deeper, away from the burning transport and the regrouping shock troops. The walls pressed close on both sides, jagged stone that scraped their shoulders as they squeezed through narrow passages. "They will follow," Princess Lyraeth said. She moved behind him, her breathing steady despite the pace. Kelvoran hunters never abandon prey. "Good," Derek said. She blinked. "Good?" "Predictable enemies make mistakes." The ravine opened into a wider chamber where 3 passages branched off. Derek stopped, studying each opening. The leftmost passage angled down. The center climbed upward. The right curved back toward the canyon. "We should go up," the Meridian scholar said. "Reach the plateau. Signal for help. They'll expect that." Derek pointed to the descending passage. "We go down." "Into the deep stone?" The Zenthari diplomat's voice rose in pitch. "That is madness. There are creatures below, things that hunt in darkness, things that hunt us too," Derek said, "and I'm betting the Kelverins know it." He moved to the chamber's edge and knelt, running his fingers through the dust. Boot prints. Recent. Someone had scouted these passages within the last few hours. "They knew we'd crash here," Derek said. "They knew we'd run. They've mapped our escape routes." Princess Lyrawith crouched beside him. "You read terrain. Part of the job." "What job?" "You wear no rank, carry no designation." Derek stood without answering. He grabbed a loose rock and threw it down the descending passage. It clattered for 3 seconds before the sound cut off abruptly. Something growled in the darkness below, deep, hungry. "There," Derek said. "That's our path." The Meridian scholar backed away. "You cannot be serious. The shock troops won't expect us to go where the predators live. It gives us an advantage." "It gives us death," the scholar said. A pulse blast hit the ravine entrance behind them. Rock exploded. The shock troops had reached the chamber. "Decision made," Derek said. "Move." They plunged into the descending passage. The temperature dropped immediately. Bioluminescent fungi clung to the walls, casting a sickly green glow. The tunnel spiraled down, slick with moisture. Behind them, footsteps echoed. The shock troops entered the chamber. Derek heard their tactical chatter in guttural Kelvoran. They were splitting up. Smart. Covering all 3 passages. The tunnel leveled out into a vast underground cavern. Massive stone pillars stretched from floor to ceiling. Pools of dark water dotted the floor, their surfaces perfectly still. The air smelled ancient. "Stay close to the pillars," Derek whispered. "Single file, no noise." They moved like ghosts through the cavern. Derek led them from pillar to pillar, using the stone columns for cover. His eyes adjusted to the dim light. He could see movement in the pools now, things swimming beneath the surface. Large things. A sound came from behind them. Exosuit servos. The shock troops had followed them down. Derek counted 6 signatures on his mental map. The others would be checking the alternate routes. That gave them maybe 4 minutes before the full force converged. Princess Lyrawith touched his shoulder. She pointed across the cavern. An opening in the far wall, partially hidden behind a cluster of stalagmites. Derek nodded. They moved. They were halfway across when one of the pools erupted. The creature was massive, 12 feet of scaled muscle and serrated teeth. It had 6 limbs ending in claws and eyes that glowed with predatory intelligence. A Kelvoran cave worm. Derek had read about them in the mission briefing. Apex predators that could sense vibration through stone. The delegates froze. The worm's head swiveled toward them. Its nostrils flared. "Don't move," Derek breathed. The shock troops didn't know about the worm. They were advancing through the cavern in formation, their exosuits whining with each step. The worm turned toward the sound. Derek grabbed the princess and pulled her behind a pillar. The others followed his lead. They pressed against the stone, barely breathing. The worm launched itself at the nearest shock trooper. The soldier tried to bring his weapon up. Too slow. The worm's jaws closed around the exosuit and crushed it like paper. The soldier's scream cut off with a wet crunch. The other shock troops opened fire. Pulse blasts lit up the cavern. The worm shrieked and dove back into the pool. Water exploded upward. 2 more pools erupted. 3 more worms emerged. Chaos consumed the cavern. Derek moved while the shock troops fought for their lives. He led the delegates along the wall, using the pillars as cover. Behind them, exosuits sparked and shattered. Worms roared. Pulse weapons discharged in rapid bursts. They reached the far opening and slipped through. The passage beyond climbed steeply. Derek pushed the pace, ignoring the burning in his legs. Behind them, the sounds of battle faded. They emerged into another cavern, smaller but with multiple exits. "Which way?" the Meridian scholar gasped. Derek checked their position in his mind. They'd descended roughly 200 meters and traveled half a kilometer from the crash site. The plateau above them would have emergency beacons, but reaching it meant climbing through territory the shock troops controlled, unless they created another distraction. There. Derek pointed to a passage that angled upward. "That leads to the geothermal vents, the ones keeping this whole region warm." Princess Lyrith's eyes widened. "You cannot mean to—" "The vents are unstable. One good disruption, and they'll vent to the surface. Create enough chaos that we can slip through. That could collapse the entire cavern system," she said. "I know. The shock troops will die." "They're trying to kill you," Derek said, "and restart a war that's claimed billions of lives." "I'm okay with that trade." She studied him with those crystalline eyes. "You are no cadet." "Never said I was." A roar echoed from the passage behind them. The worms were coming. "We need to move," Derek said. "Now or never." Princess Lyrith looked at her remaining people. 4 delegates. Terrified, wounded, depending on her choice. She turned back to Derek. Led the way. The geothermal passage climbed through layers of volcanic rock, heat building with every step. Sweat poured down Derek's face. The air shimmered, thick enough to choke on. The delegates struggled behind him, their breathing ragged. Princess Lyrith kept pace beside Derek. Her silver skin glistened, but she showed no signs of slowing. Silvarii evolved on a desert world. Heat was their element. "The vents are ahead," she said, reading the thermal patterns in the stone. 200 meters. Derek nodded. His shirt was soaked through. The Meridian scholar collapsed against the wall, gasping. "Cannot continue." "You can," Derek said, "because the alternative is worse." A pulse blast scorched the wall behind them. The shock troops had made it through the Wyrm cavern. Derek counted boot steps. 8 soldiers, maybe 9. They'd lost over half their force, but the survivors were the most dangerous ones. "Move!" Derek grabbed the scholar and hauled him forward. The passage opened into a chamber that made Derek's breath catch. A massive geothermal vent dominated the center, a column of superheated air rising from deep within the planet. Smaller vents dotted the walls, hissing steam. The temperature was unbearable. Ancient Kelvoran machinery ringed the main vent, regulators and dampeners that kept the thermal pressure controlled. Without them, the vent would erupt with enough force to tear through a kilometer of stone. Derek studied the setup. The machinery was old but functional. Bypass the safety systems, overload the pressure valves, and they'd have maybe 90 seconds before catastrophic failure. "Get to the far exit," he told the princess. "All of you. When this goes, run and don't look back." "What about you?" she asked. "I'll be right behind you." She didn't move. "You are lying." Derek met her gaze. "Someone has to trigger it manually. The system's too old for remote access." "Then I will stay and—" "No." Derek's voice went hard. "You're the reason this matters. The treaty. The peace. Billions of lives depending on you surviving. I'm just one soldier." "You are more than that," she said quietly. Pulse fire erupted at the passage entrance. The shock troops poured in, weapons raised. They fanned out in a tactical spread, blocking all exits except the one behind the vent. The lead soldier's voice boomed through his exosuit speakers. Princess Lyraith, surrender. Your death can be quick. Derek pushed her toward the far passage. Go. Now. She hesitated one more second, then ran. The delegates followed, scrambling across the chamber. The shock troops opened fire. Derek dove behind a thermal regulator. Pulse blasts melted the machinery around him. He grabbed a piece of torn metal and threw it at the nearest soldier. It bounced harmlessly off the exosuit. Foolish human, the soldier said. You have no weapon, no armor. You are nothing. Derek grinned. I get that a lot. He slammed his fist into the main pressure valve. Alarms shrieked. The vent roared. Superheated air blasted upward with twice its normal force. The temperature in the chamber spiked 50 degrees in 3 seconds. The shock troops staggered. Their exosuits were designed for combat, not extreme heat. Warning indicators flashed across their helmets. Derek ran, not toward the exit, toward the soldiers. They fired, but he was already moving, using the thermal distortion to mask his position. He hit the nearest soldier low at the knee joint where the armor was weakest. The exosuit buckled. Derek grabbed the pulse rifle as the soldier fell and rolled away. 3 shots. Center mass on the next soldier. The exosuit cracked. The Kelverin inside screamed. Derek kept moving. The vent was building toward critical. 60 seconds, maybe less. 2 soldiers broke formation and charged him. Derek fired between them, hitting a secondary vent. It exploded. Superheated steam filled the chamber. The soldiers stumbled. Blind. Derek circled behind them and fired twice more. Both went down. The remaining 4 soldiers regrouped near the entrance. They'd figured out his strategy. Stay back. Wait for the heat to kill him. Derek checked the thermal readings on the stolen rifle. 40 seconds to catastrophic failure. He couldn't reach the exit in time. The soldiers knew it too. They lowered their weapons slightly, confident. Derek looked at the main vent, at the pressure building to impossible levels, at the ancient regulators straining to contain forces they were never meant to hold. He raised the pulse rifle and fired directly into the vent's core. The explosion was immediate and absolute. A column of superheated air and molten rock erupted upward with the force of a tactical warhead. It punched through the chamber ceiling, through 100 meters of solid stone, and burst into the open air above the plateau. The shockwave threw Derek across the chamber. He hit the wall hard enough to crack ribs. His vision went white. The shock troops were simply gone, vaporized or buried under tons of collapsing rock. Derek forced himself up. The chamber was coming apart. Huge chunks of ceiling crashed down. The floor cracked open, revealing glowing magma below. The far exit, 30 meters away. Might as well be 30 kilometers.
Derek ran anyway. The floor gave way behind him.
He jumped across a widening chasm, made it by inches, kept running. His lungs burned. Every breath was agony. 20 meters. The ceiling directly above him cracked. A boulder the size of a transport fell. Derek dove forward. The boulder hit where he'd been standing and punched through the floor. Magma splashed upward. 10 meters. His legs were failing. Vision tunneling. But he could see them now. The princess and the delegates, silhouetted in the exit, reaching for him. 5 meters. The floor beneath his feet disintegrated. Derek jumped. His fingers caught the edge of the exit, started to slip. Hands grabbed his wrists. The princess on one side, the Meridian scholar on the other. They pulled. Derek tumbled into the passage as the chamber behind him collapsed completely. The roar was deafening. Dust and heat washed over them. Then silence. Derek lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. Every part of him hurt. "You kept your word," Princess Lyra said. She was kneeling beside him. "You came through. Told you I would," Derek managed. "You also nearly died. Occupational hazard." She smiled. It was the first time he'd seen her smile. "What occupation, Lieutenant Commander?" Derek's eyes widened slightly. "How did you—" "I checked the delegation roster while you flew. There was only one human listed. A military liaison, embedded for security purposes. Lieutenant Commander Derek Hayes, Deep Space Reconnaissance. 3 citations for valor, 2 for going against direct orders to save civilian lives. The orders were stupid," Derek said. "They usually are." She helped him sit up. "The remaining shock troops will have heard that explosion. They will investigate. Then we need to reach the plateau." "Can you walk?" Derek tested his legs. Everything hurt, but nothing was broken. "Yeah, I can walk." They moved through the passage, climbing toward the surface. Behind them, magma filled the chambers below, sealing off the tunnels. Ahead, fresh air called. They were close now. But Derek knew the hardest part was still coming. The passage opened onto the plateau as the twin suns began to set. Purple and orange light painted the rocky landscape. Derek helped the last delegate climb out, then scanned the horizon. Flat terrain for 2 kilometers in every direction. No cover, no shelter, and 35 shock troops converging on their position. "They know we are here," Princess Lyra S. said, following his gaze. Derek nodded. The massive thermal eruption had been visible for hundreds of kilometers. Every Kelvoran soldier on the planet would be heading this way. "The emergency beacon," the Meridian scholar said, pointing to a structure half a kilometer away, an old comm tower barely standing. "We can call for extraction." "We'd never make it," Derek said. "They'll cut us down in open ground." The Centauri diplomat sat heavily on a rock. "Then we are finished. We cannot fight exosuits with our bare hands." Derek looked at the 4 surviving delegates. Exhausted, terrified. The princess stood among them, back straight despite everything. She'd never given up, never stopped moving forward. He made his decision. "Princess, listen carefully. There's a drainage channel 30 meters north. See it?" She looked where he pointed, a shallow depression cutting across the plateau. "It leads toward the comm tower, stays below the sight line for the first 300 meters. You take the others. Stay low. Reach the beacon and call for help. What will you do?" Derek checked the pulse rifle. Half charge remaining. Maybe 30 shots. "I'm going to make sure they're looking at me instead of you." "That is suicide," she said flatly. "That's the job. Your job is to survive, to return home." Derek smiled. "My job is to make sure you survive. The rest is negotiable." She grabbed his arm. Her grip was stronger than he expected. "I am ordering you to come with us. You're not my commander. I am a crown princess of the Silverii Empire. I outrank you, not in the human chain of command." They locked eyes. For a moment, neither moved. Then the princess did something unexpected. She reached up and pressed her palm to his forehead. A Silverii gesture Derek recognized from the cultural briefings. A mark of profound respect. "You are either the bravest human I have ever met," she said, "or the most foolish. Can't it be both?" She almost smiled. Then her expression hardened. "If you die here, I will have your name inscribed in the Hall of Eternal Valor on my homeworld. You will be remembered. Appreciate that. Now go." She released him and turned to the delegates. "We move quickly and quietly. Do not look back. They descended into the drainage channel and disappeared from view. Derek counted to 30, then stood and fired 3 shots into the air. The response was immediate. Pulse fire lit up the plateau from 3 directions. The shock troops had been advancing in a wide net. Now they turned toward him. Derek ran east, away from the drainage channel. He fired as he moved, forcing the soldiers to track him. Their formation shifted, converging on his position. Good. He dove behind a cluster of boulders as returned fire turned the rock to molten slag. Counted to 3, popped up and fired twice. Dropped 1 soldier with a lucky shot to the helmet seal. Ducked as a dozen pulse blasts answered. Derek sprinted to new cover. A shallow crater barely deep enough. Pulse fire chased him, burning the ground at his heels. He was drawing them away, but not fast enough. A squad of 6 soldiers broke off from the main group. They were angling toward the drainage channel. They'd spotted the princess. Derek's jaw clenched. He stood fully exposed and emptied his rifle at the squad. 3 shots connected. 1 soldier went down. The others turned toward him. The rifle died with electronic whine. Empty. Derek threw it aside and ran. 20 soldiers pursued him now. Their exosuits ate up the distance. Derek's lungs screamed. His injured ribs ground together with each breath. He wasn't going to outrun them. Ahead, the plateau ended in a cliff. Beyond it, nothing but air and a 1,000-meter drop into a river canyon. Derek kept running. Pulse fire tore up the ground around him. A blast caught his leg. Pain exploded through his calf. He stumbled but forced himself forward. The cliff edge rushed closer. 50 meters. The shock troops were closing. Derek could hear their servos, feel the heat of their weapons charging. 30 meters. He thought about his crew on the reconnaissance ship, about the promises he'd made to come back, about Earth, billions of kilometers away. 20 meters. He thought about the princess, about her people and the Kelverans, about the war that would consume whole star systems if she died. 10 meters. Derek didn't slow down. He hit the cliff edge at full speed and jumped. The world dropped away beneath him. Wind roared in his ears. The river canyon opened below, endless and dark. Behind him, the shock troops skidded to a stop at the cliff edge. Derek twisted in midair and saw them silhouetted against the purple sky. Saw them raising their weapons. Saw the moment they realized he'd chosen death over capture. Then he hit the river. The impact drove the air from his lungs. Cold water swallowed him. The current grabbed him immediately, savage and relentless. Derek tumbled through the darkness, unable to tell up from down. His lungs burned. His vision went gray at the edges. He kicked, pulled with his arms, fought against the current. His head broke the surface. He gasped, sucking in air. The river swept him downstream, smashing him against rocks. He grabbed at one and held on, pulling himself partially out of the water. Above, at the cliff edge, the shock troops watched. One raised his rifle. Then a sound cut through the canyon, the high-pitched whine of atmospheric engines. Derek looked up. A Silveri combat cruiser descended through the clouds, weapons hot. It was beautiful and terrible, all sleek lines and barely contained power. The shock troops scattered as the cruiser opened fire. Precision strikes turned their exosuits into scrap metal. A rescue beam locked onto Derek. He felt himself lifted from the river, water streaming off him as the cruiser's gravity field pulled him aboard. He collapsed on the deck, coughing up river water. Princess Lyra Waithe stood over him, flanked by Silveri soldiers in full combat armor. "You jumped off a cliff," she said. Derek coughed. "Seemed like a good idea at the time. You are absolutely the most foolish human I have ever met." "You said bravest before. I changed my mind." But she was smiling. "Welcome aboard, Lieutenant Commander. Let us finish this." The cruiser's medical bay hummed with alien technology as scanners worked on Derek's injuries. The Silvarii medic wrapped his leg with regenerative bandaging that felt cool against the burned flesh. 3 cracked ribs, second-degree burns, severe exhaustion. Nothing that would kill him. Princess Lyra If entered without knocking. She changed into combat armor, sleek silver that caught the light like water. "The remaining shock troops have surrendered," she said. "Kelverin High Command is denying all knowledge of the attack. They claim it was a rogue faction. Do you believe them? No. But it does not matter. We recovered communication logs from the dead soldiers, evidence of who ordered the attack. The warlord caste's involvement is undeniable." She sat beside his medical bed. "The treaty will proceed. My people and the Kelverins will have peace. That's good. Because of you." She studied him with those crystalline eyes. "You saved my life 4 times by my count. You destroyed an army to protect strangers. You jumped off a cliff rather than let them use you as leverage." She paused. "Why?" Derek thought about it. About the wars humanity had fought among themselves. About the scars Earth still carried from conflicts that had consumed generations. About what it meant to finally reach the stars and find the same patterns repeating across different species. "Because war is easy," he said finally. "Peace is hard. Somebody has to choose the hard thing." The princess was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her armor and pulled out a small crystal pendant. It glowed with soft inner light. "This is the Star of Valor, the highest honor my people can bestow on a warrior. It has been awarded only 17 times in our history." She placed it in his hand. "You are the first human to receive it, the first alien of any species." Derek looked at the crystal. It was warm against his palm. "Thank you," he said. "No. Thank you, Lieutenant Commander Derek Hayes." She stood. "When we return to the diplomatic station, there will be ceremonies, speeches, politicians taking credit for what happened here. But I will tell the truth, that a human wearing no rank and carrying no weapon stood between extinction and hope, and he chose hope. I'm just a soldier. You are proof that humanity belongs among the stars." She moved to the door, then stopped. "The galaxy feared humans when you first arrived. They called you aggressive, dangerous, apex predators who would conquer everything you touched. Some humans are like that." "Yes, but today I learned something else." She looked back at him. "Apex predators do not just hunt. They protect. They stand between the weak and the darkness. They choose when to fight and when to show mercy." She smiled. "The galaxy will learn to respect that. To respect you." She left him alone with his thoughts. The cruiser changed course, heading for the diplomatic station. Through the viewport, Derek could see other ships joining them, Kelvoran and Silvari vessels flying in formation, a sight that would have been impossible yesterday. He closed his hand around the crystal pendant and thought about home, about the message he'd send to his crew, about explaining why he'd spent 3 days being mistaken for a cadet while preventing a galactic war. They'd never believe it. The medic returned and cleared him for light duty. Derek stood carefully, testing his injured leg. It held. He made his way to the bridge. Princess Lyra stood at the command center, coordinating with the fleet. She saw him and nodded. "We are receiving transmissions from across both empires," she said. "The news is spreading. The attack failed. The treaty stands. 6 generations of war ending because one human refused to let me die. And because you trusted that human," Derek said. "Yes." She turned to face him fully. When we reach the station, I will require a security detail for the treaty signing. Someone I trust absolutely. Someone who has already proven their worth. Derek raised an eyebrow. I'm not exactly dressed for a diplomatic function. We will find you a proper uniform, with all appropriate insignia this time. Her eyes sparkled with amusement. No more pretending to be a cadet. Fair enough. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel. The diplomatic station hung in space ahead, a massive structure of crystal and metal. Hundreds of ships surrounded it. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to witness history. Derek stood on the bridge beside the princess as they approached. He thought about the crash, the worms, the geothermal chamber, the cliff. Any of those moments could have ended differently, should have by any reasonable calculation. But humans didn't survive on reason alone. They survived on stubbornness, on refusing to quit when the odds turned impossible, on standing up when everyone expected them to stay down. The galaxy was learning that now. The cruiser docked. The airlock cycled. Princess Lirith stepped forward, then paused and looked back at Derek. "Ready, Lieutenant Commander?" Derek straightened despite his injuries. "Always." They walked together into the station, into the lights and cameras and gathered dignitaries, into a moment that would echo across star systems, a human and a Silvari princess, alive against all probability, carrying peace on their shoulders. Behind them, the Kelvoran delegation waited. Among them, former soldiers who had lost friends to the war, who wanted revenge, who saw only enemies. But they saw Derek, too, saw the human who had outfought their best troops, who had survived everything they threw at him, who stood now beside their former enemy, not as conqueror, but as guardian. One of the Kelvoran generals stepped forward. He was massive even without an exosuit, scarred from decades of combat. He looked at Derek for a long moment. Then he bowed. Deep and formal, a warrior's respect. The other Kelvorans followed. One by one they bowed to the human who had proven that apex predators could choose peace. Derek returned the gesture. The treaty was signed that day. 6 generations of war ended with the stroke of a pen, and humanity's place among the stars was secured not through conquest, but through one soldier who refused to let hope die. Later, when the ceremonies ended and the crowds dispersed, Derek stood alone on an observation deck, watching the fleets depart, Kelvoran and Silvari ships heading home together for the first time in living memory. Princess Lirith found him there. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Derek smiled. "That maybe we're going to be okay. All of us. Humans. Silvarii, Kelvorans. The whole crazy galaxy. Because of today, because of every day we choose to try." She stood beside him, watching the stars. "Humanity, fuck yeah," she said in carefully practiced English. Derek laughed. "Yeah,